welcome to the 59th episode of Total Pod Mode, your weekly comedy gaming podcast. My name is Will, and I also go by Hoodafunk, and I'm joined here by my good friend, co-host, and fellow gaming enthusiast, James, aka Mr. Bames.
What's going on, you giggling gargantuan gilla monsters?
Coming up this episode, we've got our weekly regular games catch-up, followed by the weekly gaming news, where we talk yet more layoffs in the gaming industry.
Boo.
The latest news on a much-anticipated remake, and this year's rounds of the Golden Joystick Awards.
Fantastic.
But before we get on with all of that, it's time to lay out the socials. You can, as always, find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and pretty much anywhere else you get your podcasts by searching for Total Pod Mode.
We also post regular video content of our playthroughs, stream highlights, as well as the podcast on our YouTube channel, Total Pod Mode.
You can also find us on X by searching for @TotalPodMode, all one word.
And whilst you're there, you can find me at Mr. Bames, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/MrBames_TPM.
And you can find me at Hoodafunk on X, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/Hoodafunk. Okay, man, time for another round of the catch-up. I'll hand this one over to you this week, because I'll just go ahead and say that I haven't managed to get very much time into any games outside of the Games Challenge this week, for reasons we'll get into a bit later on. So over to you, buddy.
Fair enough. Well, I sort of continued in the same vein as last week, pretty much. I finished off Lies of P.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I did actually start it again, because I just didn't feel like I was playing good enough.
Optimized enough? Right.
No, the build was fine. But I restarted last week, did the build again, and then got back to where I was quite quickly. I sort of rushed it and just sort of powered through. I used summons and things like that just to get back to where I was.
Right.
And then I got further than where I got to, but then I was just getting absolutely schooled. And I was like, right, we need to start again. No summons whatsoever.
Time to assume the ultimate form.
Don't make me assume my ultimate form!
Exactly, and just let's fucking master this game and try and get it done. So I did actually complete the entire game, all bosses, no summons, which I was very pleased with.
GG's.
Thank you very much. And I've got to say, it is excellent. It is really, really excellent. I'll get this out of the way now. There's been a lot of opinions online and talk about this game being a little bit of nonsense in terms of the parry window being too tight, too many elite enemies and things like that.
Well, why don't you cry about it?
That just sounds like salty gamers. You're used to hearing reviews like that on FromSoft games. So
yeah.
It's another dab in the plus side for me, at least.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, everyone's entitled to their opinion, obviously, but for me, that is just a bit of that. I don't want to sit here and say get good, because I think that's quite a toxic thing to say, but
just get good.
The parry timing is tight, sure, but it's not unfairly tight. It's just you have to be precise with the timings, and once you get it, you get it. I mean, I mentioned here I started again to sort of master it, and I had that Sekiro moment where you're struggling, and then suddenly all clicks into place, and you're just like, oh wow, this is fucking satisfying now. And then the only other thing I was going to say that sort of, it rubbed me the wrong way a little bit, is people are saying that you can't dodge in this game, you have to parry, and that's just absolute nonsense. You can't dodge everything. It's not a simple case of dodge or parry, like it might be in a Bloodborne.
But can you parry everything, like in Sekiro?
Yes, but because the parry timing windows are so tight, people are obviously struggling to do that.
Yeah, okay.
And I think that's where some of this comes from, because I found that with the playstyles that you can come up with the whole splitting the weapon handles and things like that, you can actually have a technique build like I did, which is not strength build at all, but you can still be wielding a big f***off weapon, because you can use a technique handle with a strength blade, and you get the same sort of effect. And some battles you will need to dodge. Some battles you will need to just stand there and absorb damage and then counter hit. And I think that that's an excellent way to add tactics and variation to the fights. I don't see that as a negative, you know?
Yeah, you don't want to be using the same tactic all the way through. It's something that I was probably guilty of doing in Elden Ring when I just had my big heavy attack sword. That was kind of my focus. But it's kind of nice when you have a boss that makes you step outside of that and do something different.
Yeah.
That's part of the challenge, and yet another positive thing to say about the game.
Exactly, and I found that you had to do that. There's one boss in particular where dodging is just the way to do it. It just is. Like, that's the most efficient way to do it. But then one of the last bosses in the game, I found that the only effective way to do it was to block. It just wasn't going to work with dodging because your stamina runs out too quickly, even with my beastly stamina bar.
Right.
So, and sometimes you have to mix and match, and I think that was excellent. I can't quite sit here and say that it's a 10 out of 10 game like you did for Armored Core the other day, because there is a little bit of nonsense in there. Some of it objective, some of it subjective. The objective stuff is kind of what I sort of mentioned last week, where there was that invisible wall stopping me from going through one of the boss's legs.
Yes, yeah.
I also saw an enemy walking across a really thin beam. It saw me on a wider platform and it started sprinting as if it was going to sprint off the beam because it was doing one of its dash attacks, and it just it didn't fall off. It just invisible walled into the edge and then came and got me. But whereas if I'd done that, I fall off straight away, right?
Yeah. So they've got some stuff in terms of the pathing there that they had to, some behind the scenes wizardry.
Yeah, and then there was another thing, similar sort of vein again. I staggered an enemy and did the attack. It's called a fatal attack. It's basically a riposte, critical attack. And as part of that, the animation knocks the enemy backwards, right? And I was stood right next to the edge of a cliff.
Yeah.
Knocked the enemy off the cliff. I'm thinking, sweet, that's a sick kill. What a badass I am. Awesome.
Nice.
We've got a badass over here.
The enemy proceeded to sit full body off the edge, so like floating on air, stood up and walked back on.
Right, okay.
And
Imagine if I came up to that when I had the Taurus Beast fight. That would have changed things up.
Exactly, and to me that's just quite poor.
Yeah, you would hope for something that built that reaction in so that there was a way to take them off the edges or trick them off the edges.
Exactly.
A lot of the time you can use it to cheese things, and I can imagine that's probably why they didn't allow it.
Yeah.
But sometimes I like to err on the edge of giving you that freedom to figure out that cheese if you want to.
My logic in it is that if I'm going to fall off the edge when I do it, then they should too. If I'm getting invisible walled and I stay off, fine, you do what you like. But because I'm falling off, I just think that's a bit harsh.
I mean, there's bosses in Elden Ring, isn't there, that do the same thing?
Yeah.
I think Margot, when he has his jumping hammer strike thing, there's plenty of times when he should have gone off the edge, 100%. But he didn't.
100%, yeah.
I'm not trying to sort of detract away from your point. I do agree that these are things, but they're also unfortunately present in quite a few other games as well.
No, I agree, but with that particular example, it's a boss. I have a slightly more leeway when it's a boss. These are mobs.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like, there's no need for a mob to survive. Like, do you know what I mean? It's just silly.
The benefit of doing it isn't that great.
No, exactly. And it just looks weird more than anything else. It's like, okay, you're floating in the air right now.
Oh, look, he's flying.
Like, great. But those are the objective things. And I must say, I did only see those 3 instances that I've already talked about. I didn't see any other nonsense. Sorry, there is one more objective thing as well. Sometimes the tracking is a little bit Dark Souls 2-y.
How do you mean?
So if an enemy is locked into an animation to do an attack, right, and I've dodged around the back of them, I don't think they should swivel on a sixpence and still hit me even when they're locked into animation.
Okay. Yeah.
It doesn't happen too much, but it does happen enough that I feel I should make the point. Doesn't detract from the fun of the game though, right? And then the one subjective thing, and this is just me, this doesn't affect my opinion of the game particularly, but in my opinion, there's too many bosses with 2 health bars in this game.
Oh, right, okay.
Some of them didn't need a second health bar. Second phase, sure, no problem, absolutely fine. A lot of these bosses didn't need a second health bar, you know?
Right.
Just my opinion though, that's just the way I like to play games.
Is there a new game plus in this game?
There is a new game plus in this game.
Oh, okay, cool.
Which I have very briefly stuck into.
And what have you made of it so far?
Yeah, it's the same game. Things have gotten more health, basically. The movesets are all the same from what I can see. You start off with all your stuff. You just lose certain collectibles, which are fine. That's sort of standard New Game Plus fare. And I look forward to carrying on with it a bit more when I finish the other thing I've played this week that we'll get onto shortly.
From the gameplay that I've seen on YouTube, it definitely looks like the most closest to Souls in terms of refinement and the way that the combat works in comparison to any of the other sort of Souls-like games out there.
Yeah, and it's incredibly brutal. I wouldn't say it's as hard as Neo or Neo 2, for example, but it's probably one of the most unforgiving of the whole bunch of them.
In some of the reviews I've seen, they mentioned that there's a large difficulty spike at certain points in the game as well, and perhaps that's affecting some people's opinion of the game as well if they're encountering bosses where they suddenly just hit a wall and can't progress on. I think that maybe that counts for some of that.
Probably does, and if you couple that with things like people complaining about the tight parry window, the dodging community just wanting to dodge, and certain times you're just not going to be able to do it effectively. If you add all those things together, it's probably why the game is getting a little bit of heat online. But all I can say, listeners, viewers, just play it, see what you think yourselves. I personally think it's excellent and would recommend it to anyone. 9.5 out of 10. Can't give it 10.
Look at you. Ah, who's spinning on it this week, man?
Yeah.
Spinning on the long Pinocchio nose.
It was excellent, and I will be playing more of it for sure. And that brings me nicely on to the second thing I played this week, because actually Lies of P have been doing a sort of collab with the second game that I've been playing this week. On the 27th of September, Wolong's second DLC dropped, so I've jumped back in. I made the mistake of jumping right back into it straight after I'd finished Lies of P, so my timings were f***ing all over the place. I had to stop playing that night. It was just like, nah, I can't do it now.
Yeah.
But picked it back up, and there's probably going to be the same complaints that there were with DLC 1 in terms of its £9.50, so what, $11, something like that. And really, you're getting 3 main missions and some sub-battlefields. It's just another sort of addition to the campaign, if you like. And the same comments apply that I made last time in terms of, because I completed the game and then got all the DLC, I'm seeing characters that have died in the main quest come back and stuff, so it's a little weird.
Right.
But if you like Wolong, it's more Wolong, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah. I mean, you're in it at this point for the boss battles, really, and the tough mob enemies, right?
Yeah, I'd probably say that's fair. And just because the fighting is very, very fun when you're just cleaving through all the little mobs. My only sort of major complaint, really, is that, because I have finished the main campaigns and I've done all the subquests bar one.
Okay.
The final boss of this one is a spam artist, and it's a little bit painful.
Fair enough.
And also, funnily enough, just to compound my misery with all the 2 health bar bosses in Lies of P, it also has 2 health bars, which I wasn't expecting.
Okay.
I have no problem with it because it's the final boss of something, and a final boss is allowed, right? Just a bit spammy. Didn't give any time. Like, if it knocks you on the floor, normally you have a beat to get yourself up. This one, it just starts attacking you again straight away. It has a 10-hit combo that it can link with another 10-hit combo if the RNG allows it. But, you know, it is beatable. Many people have done it, including me. I got very lucky, though, to be fair, incredibly lucky. If my Divine Beast hadn't recharged just at the right time, I probably would have died. So
Right, okay.
But other than that, it is more Wolong, which is only a good thing. But it's not pulling up any trees. It's not, rewriting the storybooks in terms of quality. They are still reusing assets. So Koei Tecmo, a little bit cheeky with how much you're charging for this, but I'm here for it still.
Yeah, it sounds like the only way to pick this up and get your value out of it is to go ahead and buy the season pass or whatever the equivalent of that is, because these DLCs don't sound like they justify the individual price.
No, not at all. And I think the season pass gives you access to the 3 DLC, and I think you can pick up the season pass for 20 quid, so $22, $25. And that essentially means you're getting all 3 DLC for the price of 2, which still arguably isn't the best deal, but is a much better deal than if you're spending $11, £10 on all of them, right?
Sure thing. Yeah.
And again, because I bought the season pass right at the start when I pre-ordered it, I got that premium edition that had everything. It's not bothering me at all because I spent that money months ago, so I'm not really tracking it.
Long forgotten.
Exactly. But yeah, other than that, man, I have not played anything else this week, so there we have it.
Okay, man. Well, I think it's about time we took us on to the weekly gaming news. So our first article of the day from Eurogamer, Fortnite maker Epic Games is cutting about 16% of its staff.
Oh, not again.
Yeah, yet more news of staffing cuts amongst the gaming industry. Epic has confirmed reports of widespread layoffs at the company, saying the move will affect around 830 employees, with approximately 2/3 of those job cuts said to be in teams outside of core development. For a while now, Epic CEO Tim Sweeney wrote in an all-staff email, now shared on the company's website, "We've been spending way more money than we earn, investing in the next evolution of Epic and growing Fortnite as a metaverse-inspired ecosystem for creators. I had long been optimistic that we could power through this transition without layoffs, but in retrospect, I see that this was unrealistic." While Fortnite is starting to grow again, the growth is driven primarily by creator content with significant revenue sharing, and this is a lower margin business than we had when Fortnite Battle Royale took off and began funding our expansion. Success with the creator ecosystem is a great achievement, but it means a major structural change to our economics. Sweeney adds that the company has been making ongoing efforts to reduce costs globally, including moving to net zero hiring and cutting operating spend on things like marketing and events. But it remains far short of financial sustainability. Sweeney insists that doing layoffs now and on this scale will stabilise our finances.
Well, no If you get rid of that many people, of course it will.
16% of staff is a huge layoff. It's almost a fifth.
Yeah, and the fact that they're all outside core development makes me think it's all going to be admin staff, office workers, people of that nature, and that just sucks.
I imagine so, yeah.
Won't be any of the directors, I'm sure.
No, God forbid. Epic insists no more layoffs will occur beyond the 830 announced today, saying that these changes financially stabilise the business.
Yeah, I'll believe that when I see it.
In light of today's job cuts, Epic says it will prioritise work on the next Fortnite season and Fortnite Chapter 5, as well as Del Mar, Sparks and Juno. Del Mar and Juno are rumoured to be the codenames for a Fortnite car racing mode and Fortnite Lego collaboration, respectively.
A Fortnite car racing mode, eh?
Fortnite car, it was always there. You know, they finally plucked it from the sky and decided to hit that cash cow. Yeah. Epic have got, vehicle physics and stuff down with Rocket League. The worlds are colliding.
That's true. Those sounded, Lego collab is, everyone collabs with Fortnite. That doesn't really surprise me. Could be neat.
That just sounds like Fortnite and Roblox had a baby.
Yeah.
Or I suppose Lego kind of is the grandfather of Roblox, really, right?
Oh, I guess. In a weird
Maybe
way.
the great-grandfather at this point, to be honest.
It's on the same hereditary tree, I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But yeah, this just isn't nice, is it?
No, this is horrible news to hear, as always, and it's just in a growing sea of news like this. We covered Embracer Group cutting Volition Games just a while back, a couple of weeks ago on the podcast, I believe.
Yeah, Ubisoft as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've only even today read news that Creative Assembly has confirmed it will making redundancies across the company as well.
Particularly concerning for when it's Epic, because until this news came out, I was under the impression that they were as rich as God.
Yeah.
So this is a bit of a crazy one. But then having said that, there's other businesses in the world right now that are making like record revenues and are still making cuts. Shout outs to the WWE, who have just cut a bunch of people for seemingly no reason given how rich they are, but this isn't a wrestling podcast, so we won't get into that.
Shut up!
It's always sad news, and I just wonder how much similar news we'll be hearing in the coming months. This kind of feels a bit like a tidal wave swooping across the industry. Everyone's kind of undergoing a collective tightening of the purse strings at this moment.
I hope that it is sort of just these few companies we've spoken about in a bit of a sort of vacuum from the rest of the industry, because if it's going to be an industry-wide thing, that makes me concerned that because games are getting more and more expensive to create, some games have bigger budgets than a lot of movies these days. It makes me a little concerned it's going to become untenable. So hopefully it is just a vacuum. Ubisoft that we've mentioned previously, they've been in financial dire straits for quite a while, so theirs wasn't surprising. Fingers crossed that these are all just extenuating circumstances and it's not a wider problem for the industry at large.
Okay, man, I think it's time we moved on to our second article of the day. From our friends at Game Rant, new KOTOR remake update. Is it good news or bad news for fans?
Hopefully good.
Fingers crossed. Fans of Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic are beginning to question the future of the much anticipated projects. There's been very little news about the title since the Knights of the Old Republic remake was announced back in September 2021.
Yeah, I think the only thing was there was a rumour that it was going to be canned, wasn't there?
Yes, yeah, I think that's kind of been the echoing rumour ever since we haven't heard anything since then. The announcement of a modernised remake was initially met with a lot of excitement from fans, especially with the involvement of Aspyr Media, who were, alongside BioWare, the developers of the original game. Reports came with claims that the project was on hold, and Aspyr's parent company, Saber Interactive, took over Knights of the Old Republic remake development as of 2022. Since then, Saber Interactive and Embracer Group have been tight-lipped on the status of the game, to say the least.
Yeah, which given the first story we've just covered and the fact that Embracer Group had similar issues not too long ago is a little concerning.
Yeah, it doesn't point to anything good, does it?
No.
Keen-eyed fans have noticed that the official 2021 trailer for the much-anticipated Knights of the Old Republic remake has recently gone private on YouTube.
Oh, that's damning.
Or is it? Aspyr hasn't made any official announcement on the matter yet, although people are already beginning to guess at news of a cancellation being on the horizon. However, removing the official trailer from YouTube doesn't necessarily mean the project is getting canned for sure. There are some hopeful fans speculating that a re-reveal may be happening in the near future. The reason for this being that the original trailer only attributed Aspyr as the developer, and with the title moving ownership over to Saber Interactive, some think that it may have undergone enough changes to warrant a brand new trailer.
Okay, that's actually fair. Yeah, that could be reasonable. Yeah, okay.
That's turned you. I've kind of gone the other way. I still feel like it's clutching at straws, but...
Well, I think I probably am being optimistic because I would love I know that I slag off remakes quite a lot because I want people to make new games, but I really like KOTOR.
You'll bend the rules for the KOTOR remake. Fair
Yeah,
enough,
I will. Yeah,
Fallout 3, not quite, but KOTOR's, yeah.
I'm a hypocrite. I can live with that. That's fine.
Remake the games that I want you to remake.
Exactly.
Gosh.
Yeah. Don't do games that I don't need. Jesus.
Yo, I like Sega, hit me up with the Earthworm Jim remake, please. You know it's on the cards.
I'd be so down for that.
Thing is such a classic.
Yeah, I know.
So not helping the pessimistic tone for some, it doesn't help that Embracer Group has refused to make any official remarks about the game the past few months. Back in May, during an investor call, Embracer Group CEO Lars Wingefors refused to comment about the Knights of the Old Republic remake when inquired about its current progress. Previously, industry insider Jeff Grubb claimed that the game may never be released. Now it looks like fans might not have to wait longer for an official update, one way or the other. Where do you land on this, James? Do you think that we're going to get a cancellation, or do you think that we're going to just get like a minor update and perhaps at most like a slightly extended trailer?
So you see, this news article has taken me on a roller coaster the whole way, right? I started off being super negative, like, oh damn, this means it's going to get canned. And then the next bit I was like, okay, yeah, no, that makes sense to me. But then that last paragraph there has really dropped me back down again.
All the way down to reality.
I feel that the CEO wouldn't have refused to comment at all. Like, he would have said something.
Yeah, you'd think he'd have done something a little cheeky, like, yeah, we're on it.
Exactly, or a little like, oh, we're waiting to see, there'll be some news about that coming. But to just
imagine if he did that and then the news that it coming was the cancellation. Oh, just you guys wait, we got some big news for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So next week, we're not making it. No. Project's off. Sorry, people, go home.
You're breaking my heart.
Fingers crossed we do still get the remake, but hey, if it doesn't happen, then so be it.
Okay, man, I think that's enough KOTOR news for one day. It's time to move on to our third and final article of the day. This time from Games Radar. Voting for the Golden Joystick Awards 2023 is now live. Voting for this year's Golden Joystick Awards has begun, with a raft of nominees across multiple categories now available for people to consider for a vote. We have until October 20th to have our say in hotly contested categories, including Best Storytelling, Best Visual Design, and Most Wanted Game. Baldur's Gate 3 and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom lead the way with 4 nominations each, while multiple categories reveal intriguing matchups. For example, Street Fighter VI squares up to Mortal Kombat 1 for Best Multiplayer Game. On October 23rd, the Ultimate Game of the Year award, Best Performer and Best Supporting Performer will be revealed, with voting due to go live on the same day before closing on October 27th. The awards ceremony is due to go ahead on November 10th with an in-person event, which is a first since back in 2019.
That's cool. First post-Pandy event.
Exactly, yeah, they're finally coming back.
Let's hear about some of these nominations, man.
So I just picked a handful of the nominations here and I figured I'd run through them. So off top, we have Best Storytelling, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. So some interesting nominations for that. Baldur's Gate 3, Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon, and Star Wars Jedi Survivor on that list are the ones that I'm familiar with. I'd probably have to take a stab and say that the best storytelling is going to be Baldur's Gate 3 because that is kind of a game that is built around storytelling. It's kind of storytelling the game. Like Jedi Survivor, I think that just based on my experiences with Jedi Fallen Order, I can tell that would be like a well-directed game that has a lot of good scenes in it and things like that. So I'm sure that the storytelling is good in that. Personally, playing through Armored Core 6, there isn't much storytelling, but the story that is there is really good and it is told in a good way. It's just when I consider the other 2 entries in here, which I would suspect might take it, it seems to me that it's very likely that would come in third. So my one is on Baldur's Gate 3 for this one.
I think I agree. I will say though, I'm surprised Starfield's not on there.
That's an interesting shout. Yeah, did it just come too late in the year? Or, I mean, like, Baldur's Gate 3's on there, which only came out just before that.
Yeah, so that's a bit of a surprising one for me. Can't argue with it though. I don't know most of the games, but I do agree. I think Baldur's Gate 3 will take that.
Moving on, we have Best Multiplayer Game, which is led by Exoprimal, Diablo 4, Street Fighter 6, Remnant 2, Mortal Kombat 1, and We Were Here Expeditions: The Friendship.
Fair. I've actually played 2 of these.
There you go.
So I can have an opinion. Diablo 4's multiplayer, for all the issues that game has, it is excellent. So fair play to it. Remnant 2, I didn't actually play multiplayer with anyone. I only played it single player. But if it's anything like Remnant 1's multiplayer, that's going to be fantastic. So
yeah, I mean, it's a good game that has multiplayer. Yeah, it's going to go down well. Absolutely.
Exactly. And then, Mortal Kombat 1 and Street Fighter 6. They're fighting games. They're always going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that they're going to be clear, strong contenders in this category as well.
Yeah.
Do you have any leaning as to who might snag this, though? I think personally it's between the two fighters.
I think Street Fighter 6 will probably take it. My personal opinion from what I've played, I would give it to Remnant 2, but I think Street Fighter 6 will take it purely because Mortal Kombat Switch port's so trash, and I think that might leave a bad taste in the mouth for some people, because I have seen Mortal Kombat 1's gameplay looks amazing on consoles and PC, right? But Street Fighter 6 I've only heard good things about. So
they seem to take an absolute right return to on-course Street Fighter gameplay when they released 6. It was a big relief. Visually, it looks a hell of a lot better than 5, and a lot of the gameplay that I've seen looks really fun and really crunchy as well. Although I do suspect that recency bias will play a hand in this vote, and I think Mortal Kombat 1 might take it.
I guess we will see. But I think we're in agreement it's going to be one of the fighting games.
Up in Best Visual Design, we have Baldur's Gate 3, Starfield, notably missing from some of the other categories, Hi-Fi Rush, Viewfinder, Lies of P, and again, Street Fighter 6.
Based on the ones I've played, this is incredibly easy for me, Lies of P.
Lies of P, right?
Comfortably for me. For me.
Yeah.
Shout outs to Starfield. I do like the design in Starfield, but it is a little bit too Bethesda to win this award, I think.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Under certain lights, Starfield looks absolutely gorgeous and pretty mind-blowing. But again, you just have to be conscious of looking a little bit closer might uncover something.
But Lies of P, it looks wonderful. So for me, it's an easy one. Shout outs to Baldur's Gate 3 too, as well. That's a very good-looking game.
Very good-looking game. It's got a pretty standard, what I would describe as just fantasy aesthetic. Yeah. It's D&D through and through. It does look good. Does it stand up to Starfield or Lies of P? We'll have to see.
Do you have a strong opinion either way on that category?
I honestly don't. I don't think that I've played enough of any of these games to really make an informed opinion. I would guess, and I would probably agree with you, that Lies of P is where it's at based on what I've seen of it. We'll go ahead with the next 3 categories. PC Game of the Year, up with Baldur's Gate 3, Diablo 4, System Shock Remake, Dave the Diver, Chia, and Shadow Gambit, The Cursed Crew.
Once again, no Starfield, although I know it's coming later.
I think Baldur's Gate 3 is probably going to take this one. Again, it just seems like a game that was very, very popular. I can imagine a lot of people would get behind that and vote for it.
Yep, I agree.
Now we have PlayStation Game of the Year. We have Final Fantasy 16, Resident Evil 4, Street Fighter 6, it's got a lot of nominations.
Yeah.
Humanity, Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon, and Star Wars Jedi Survivor.
Again, I've not played any of these, but from what I've heard, I would imagine it's not going to be Final Fantasy 16. Probably Street Fighter or Resi.
Yeah.
I know that you've spoken very high of Armored Core, but I don't know if it will be above those ones just in terms of the general fan base size.
Yeah. I would say out of this category, just based on my opinion, I think that Armored Core 6 should probably take this. Although I suspect, actually, the Final Fantasy 16 might not do as bad as you'd have thought. I think that there's quite a large Sony fan base that would be voting for Final Fantasy 16. Might carry it through. Resident Evil 4 is a really fun game for me, but the only one that I can really get behind and stand behind in this is Armored Core 6, so I'll go ahead and put my vote there.
Fair. Yeah, just because I'm making a choice, I'll say Street Fighter 6, just because I have to make a choice. I've not played any of them, so I don't know.
You want to run in the fire.
Yeah, I'll just because I haven't played any of them, but yeah, we'll go with that.
Next up, we have, predictably, Xbox Game of the Year, this time with Starfield, Chance of Senna, Hi-Fi Rush, Planet of Lana, Dead Space, and Pentiment.
Yeah, and congratulations to Starfield for winning that award. I'm sure that it's just, I'm sorry. It's just,
I can't see the Dead Space remake is going to take this. This kind of feels a little bit like a repetition of Xbox still not quite hitting it off the mark with its own exclusive, large, heavy-hitting titles.
Of those lists there, I've not played any of them apart from Starfield, admittedly. I'd heard that Hi-Fi Rush was okay, but...
Yeah, I've heard good things, yeah.
But yeah, Starfield for me wins that.
Suppose we'd better cover the Nintendo Game of the Year. We have Pikmin 4.
Is there a point? Is there any point?
Oh, no!
Hey, Pikmin 4 has a chance, I think.
Does it? Okay.
We also have The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, Fire Emblem Engage, which has a huge fan base in Japan.
That's fair, actually, yeah.
Metroid Prime Remastered, Octopath Traveler 2, and Fae Farm.
Now, I will say Octopath Traveler 2, I believe, has got a huge following as well. So shout-outs to that. But
I reckon there's some kind of iceberg games here that you or I probably just aren't as aware of as we should be. And there's probably some big reaches in here. But, I mean, go ahead and say it. What do you think's going to take this?
I mean, I'd be staggered if Tears of the Kingdom doesn't win this. Staggered.
Right, yeah, it has to be, you would think.
That's in the conversation for Game of the Year, right?
Yeah, I would say so, yeah. Yeah, I think that's absolutely there.
Now, this next category, though, this one's interesting.
This category is Most Wanted Games. So this is a pretty wild one. I guess anything could technically appear on this list.
Exactly.
It does seem to be mostly already confirmed games. So we have Death Stranding 2, Star Wars Outlaws, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Tekken 8, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, Fable, Frostpunk 2, Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, and Black Myth Wukong. What have you got your eyes on mostly?
Of these games that are on the list, Death Stranding 2 intrigues me, Tekken 8 intrigues me,
Cannot wait for Death Stranding 2.
Fable intrigues me, but the two that I am most hyped for are Black Myth Wukong, which we did mention on a previous episode, and Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 for me, because I fucking adored the first one.
Yeah.
What do I think's going to win? I feel like Death Stranding 2 is incredibly hyped in general, but I don't know if that's just a very niche populace of the fan base who likes Death Stranding. And I don't think there's that much fanfare around the next part of Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Do you not? I'm of the opinion that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth might actually take this one just because people are so keen for them to finally get to the end of this goddamn series and finish off that title.
It won't be finished though, will
so
it?
long.
It's only part 2.
Is it only but how many parts are there going to be at this stage? They can't have a part 3 that releases that long down the line.
I think the rumor was 3 or 4.
So I think if it's the case that this finishes, which if it's not, then I understand. I think that would have probably the most anticipation behind it.
If it finishes the remake, I agree. I think that it will probably win. But I got a feeling it's part 2 of 3 or 4.
Right, okay, yeah, okay. My personal bias leads me towards Death Stranding 2 as well as Metal Gear Solid Delta, although I'm doubtful that a remake is going to be most wanted.
Oh, you say that. Final Fantasy VII. That's a remake, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it's true. It is, yeah. But there was something huge about Final Fantasy VII.
No,
That's
right.
got like movies about it and stuff.
Yeah, no, it's a different animal. I do appreciate that. My heart wants it to be Black Myth Wukong or Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2.
Yeah, probably deserves it.
My head is saying I'm going to go with Death Stranding 2. I just think that Kojima still has that magic about him. I've played Death Stranding 1 now, and I can see why people loved it so much. I don't have that much love for it. I fucking enjoyed playing it when we were playing it. But I don't have the same love for it you do, for example. But yeah, I think I'll go with Death Stranding 2.
Well, man, we'll have to sit around and wait for a while because we won't find out the answers to this until November 10th. But I'm looking forward to having the reveal, and we'll cover that on a podcast coming soon. Okay, man, it's time that we moved on to the
Games Challenge!
So, James, picking up from where we left off last week with the Games Challenge, you set me the challenge to complete the first 6 arena missions in Monster Hunter Rise and achieve a score of S rank in at least 3 of those missions.
I did. How did you get on?
So, I'll go ahead and say right ahead that this was a very difficult challenge, not least because I was sort of quite delayed starting it. I didn't actually start making some real headway on the challenge until Monday of this week because I was away over the weekend. When I did come back, I only actually had 2 of the arena quests unlocked. So at that point, I was kind of operating under the assumption that as I progressed through the arena quests, more ones would unlock.
A fair assumption.
So I began on my merry way with Arena Quest 1. And what I will say about these arena quests is that they give you a monster or a number of monsters to fight, and you're provided with a set amount of equipment. There's something like 5 or 6 different classes to pick between, and they have their own unique armor sets and weapons and different attributes that go with them.
Yep, different elements, things of that nature.
Exactly that. And sometimes it even changes up certain moves that you can do, like the switch skills. They'll vary between different weapons as well.
Yeah.
So this was an interesting challenge because it actually got me to step outside my comfort zone of only using the charge blade for the most part.
Which is exactly what I thought of when it did it, because when I first played the arena modes, it did that for me, and that's actually how I got using some of the weapons that I use to this day. So I was hoping that would be the case.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a really, really good opportunity, and definitely coming out of this, I've discovered quite a few new weapons that I've really enjoyed using, some that I was kind of previously curious about, and some that I tried just by virtue of the fact that it was the way that the challenge played out. So I definitely got to step outside my comfort zone and use a whole bunch of new weapons that I've been completely neglecting up until this point.
Excellent.
So that said, Arena Challenge 1, you go ahead and fight a monster that is called a Kulu-Yaku, and for this one I took in the Switch Axe, which I believe is a weapon that you'd actually previously praised on one of the podcasts, or at least off the pod for sure.
Yeah, it's now my new main because of this arena quest. That's one of the ones that I was,
There you go. So this weapon is a kind of a combination axe and sword. Interestingly, the large axe attack is actually your faster of the two attacks, and then the weapon slows you down considerably, but therefore deals a bunch more damage when you engage the sword mode.
Yeah, and has a pretty much unbreakable combo. So when you're in it, you can't be staggered out of it for the most part. You can by some enemies, but for the most part, you're kind of stuck, which is great.
Yeah, it's very, very powerful. And once you've managed to charge up both the axe and the sword in combination, you can then unleash a special attack where you sort of jab the sword into the air. And if it makes contact with something, you'll kind of then jump onto it, plunge your sword deep into it, and then you can mash the attack button for additional hits and damage. And then it creates like a large explosion, which sends you flying and does a bunch of damage to whatever you've managed to plunge the switch axe into.
Yes, and with an enemy like the Kulu, which is a sort of mid-size enemy, it's not one of the bigger ones, it can just knock them over for ages. It's great.
And this is quite a weak enemy in comparison to some of the other monsters in this, so you really get a sense of the damage that this thing can do, breaking a bunch of different monster parts or the whole way through this fight. I did actually want to give a quick shout out to the longsword, because this was actually the weapon that I initially started and wanted to use for this fight. I ended up getting an A rank at best with the longsword, just because I felt like its damage output wasn't enough, but it has some really cool techniques where you can sheathe the sword and then do an attack out of it, which creates a load of damage. Or one of my preferred abilities was actually the fact you can sheathe the sword, and if you press a button at the right time, you kind of become temporarily invincible. You ignore any attack that the enemy does, and then you unleash an even more powerful attack. So that was really useful as well. There's actually like almost a move that enables you to do a perfect dodge where you come out of completely unscathed.
Oh, that's quite cool. I didn't know that.
There's some really cool tech behind these weapons, and as I've said, this challenge really got me to explore some of that. And given the fact that I was trying to S-rank a lot of these challenges as well, that was the requirement, that I got at least 3 of them S-ranked. I was also using quite a few YouTube videos in order to perfect the maximum damage output. A lot of the weapons have a course that you need to follow in order to fully charge them and achieve either an ultimate move or just maximum damage output. So that formed a core part of what I was doing, was actually going online, looking at 20-minute weapon variation videos just to see what was the best thing to use and what were the best sort of moves to use with that weapon.
Yeah, get some strats down, have a little play, see what you can do best and see what you can execute best, and then go get that S rank, baby.
Try as I might, I couldn't get it with the longsword, so I moved over to the switch axe, and within a handful of attempts, I actually managed to get the S rank for Arena 1.
Which, for context, everyone, is kill the Kulu in 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, so I was very happy with the victory there, and infused with that success, I moved on to Arena Rank 2, where this time I was presented with another array of weapons, none of which were the switch axe, my trusty dual blades, or my charge blade. So it was about time for me to get acquainted with the hammer.
Hammer time!
Which was another weapon that I've been meaning to try out for quite some time in this game.
Now that surprises me. I didn't see you as a hammer boy in Monster Hunter.
It's a technique that I've seen people use online, and it just looked really fun. I like the kind of relentless bonking that you can do with this hammer. And then it's also powered up quite a bit with the wire bug attacks that you can do. You can do a wire bug attack where you can cast it into the air in front of you, and then you'll do like a spinning several hit hammer attack. I think it can do about 6 to 7 hits all the way through as you barrel through the air. But it's really, really good stuff, and it can also be paired with another move where you can cast a wire bug directly above you, at which point you do a massive damaging slam attack, and that is your biggest damage dealer in the game.
Nice.
The downside to that is that it's very slow to do. It has a long window of recovery after you've done it, and if you try and do it to an enemy that isn't staggered or stunned or knocked over or something like that, chances of you getting knocked out the air are very high.
I was going to say, presumably if you miss, you're as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That recovery window is pretty big. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the hammer is a cool weapon though, because you have your regular array of attacks, but it has 2 different stances. One of them changes your 3-tiered charge move into a kind of whirlwind spinny attack that finishes with a bit of a golf swing flourish. The other mode ends up in much more slam attacks that are much more useful, I found at least, and they enable you to kind of retain control over your character rather than being stuck on a bit of a whirlwind path. So I was using the strength pose for this quite a bit, and I found that through charging up the hammer you can still unleash those wire bug attacks charged as well.
Okay.
So whenever there was a big window, I was doing the fully charged attack, scoring a bunch of hits on an enemy.
Nice.
And it's very good for breaking monster parts. It was very useful for taking down this Barroth, especially when he does that move where he shoves his head into the ground.
Oh, yeah.
That was pretty much my cue to do a fully charged barrel roll attack so I could travel down his whole body, breaking it. Really, really effective.
And that would be really handy as well, because the Barroth sort of covers itself in mud, doesn't it? And that gives it a lot more defense. So if you've got something that can break stuff super easily, because it's really weak underneath that, apart from his head.
And the cool thing about the hammer is pretty much everything bounces when you use the hammer.
Yeah.
So unlike sharp weapons, where it would just be bouncing off and doing no damage, the hammer's pretty much constantly doing a decent amount of damage as well.
Yeah, there's shout-outs to blunt weapons. They're really handy in situations like heavy armor always use a blunt weapon.
So this S rank, as I decided that I was going to try and S rank as many of these early missions as possible.
Wise.
It didn't come as easy as I would have hoped, but I did finally manage to get another S rank using the hammer, and I think in this case it was killing the Barroth in under 4 minutes.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Barroths are a lot more tanky than a Kulu, so I can believe that.
But with enough tries, I was eventually able to persevere, and I finally got that second S rank. So
2 for 2.
2 for 2 on the S ranks. I was very happy with that. And at this point for me, I was convinced that the main difficulty in this challenge was going to be getting those S ranks. But with 2 out of 3 already in the bag, I was feeling pretty good about myself.
Yes, and at this point, I'd like to say that that's making me a bit worried, because I agree. My thought was the difficulty of the challenge was going to be getting the S ranks. I have every confidence in you beating all of the arenas. So 2 for 2, fair play, man.
Let me tell you that this was after a lot of attempts of watching optimized YouTube videos where someone kind of laid the groundwork for me and then I just sat about optimizing that run.
Yeah.
So getting those first 2 S ranks certainly wasn't easy. But as I said, I thought that was going to be the biggest challenge in it. This is where the real challenge came in.
Oh, dear.
Because with Arena 2 completed and S ranked, where was Arena Rank Challenge 3?
Well, presumably it was sitting there because you must have been Hunter rank 3, Will.
Well, no, I wish I could say that, but actually the way that arena challenges work in this game is that they actually progress as you unlock more and more of your hub quests. So in order to unlock Arena Rank 3, you actually need to complete a mission which is in the 5-star hub quest category. At that current point in the game, I was only in the 3-star hub quest category, so I had quite a bit of work to do in order to just get to the 5-star, given that each of the star tiers you need to complete about 5 missions before you can progress to the next one, and that's only after you've completed an in-between challenge where you have to do an urgent quest, which is either take on a very difficult monster or have a bit of like a tower defense game whilst multiple monsters attack you.
Oh, yeah, the f***ing
Rampage missions.
Thank you, yeah.
So being level 3, I think I had to do like a good maybe 10 missions or something like that to get to level 5. No biggie. And I finally unlocked Arena Rank 3. But at that point, I got thinking, hang on a second. That took me quite a bit of time to unlock Arena Rank 3. That's only halfway through this challenge. I need to unlock 6 arenas. So at that point, I went on the internet and I had a little look up just to see what missions I needed to unlock. And I discovered that Arena 4 required me to do a 6-star quest amongst other missions. Arena 5 required me to do a 7-star hub quest. Arena Rank 6 required me to do a 7-star hub quest and another 7-star sub quest, which is only available once you've beaten the game through the hub quest options as well. So all in all, just to complete and unlock all of the arenas, I needed to do something like 26 separate missions.
Ooh, oh dear. Now,
Huge.
I at this point have to hold my hands up and apologise to Will here, because I didn't know that was a thing. I thought that you got all the Hunter ranks and the arena stuff just from completing the main game, which, as I said in last week's episode, Will confirmed he did. So I am really sorry about that. That is completely on me that you had to do all that extra work.
It was insane and completely unanticipated. I definitely didn't expect it, and I was saying to myself as I was doing it, there is no way James factored this in.
No, I must have read it wrong, because I read that it was you have to do like some 7-star quests to unlock the Hunter rank 7 for the arena rank 6. But I assumed that was like, because on my game, I'm Hunter rank 6 and I've got to the same point as you.
Yes, yeah. So those are village quests, not hub quests.
And that's the thing.
Two separate
and I think
things.
I even said on last week's episode, you'll be there or thereabouts because because you finished the game. And so that is a complete mistake on my part. And you haven't told us the result of the challenge yet, but if you have failed, I take some of the blame for that. So apologies for that, but we'll get to that.
It was rough, man. So this was pretty much from Wednesday onwards, because Monday, Tuesday, it pretty much took me to get S rank in those first 2 quests. From Wednesday onwards, I set about pretty much all of my time that I wasn't spent either working or sleeping into Monster Hunter, and I went from Arena Rank 3 all the way up to Arena Rank 8 eventually.
Ooh.
During that time, I felt like I defeated pretty much every enemy in the game again, including a couple of enemies actually that I don't think I'd ever fought before. One of them that I particularly like to know is Wind Serpent Ibushi, which I actually think is the proper final boss of the game, past Magnum Malos, because you see the credits roll and you fight Magnum Malos, but Wind Serpent Ibushi comes out later down the line.
Yeah, there might be one other one as well, I think.
Oh, really?
Maybe.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm aware that Wind Serpent Ibushi is like a big bad boy at the end.
So this is kind of like a sort of like floating crazy dragon type thing that you initially have to fight during a rampage quest, and you also then have to fight again right at the end of the game. Quick shout outs, because it was a really fun boss fight. He actually has large chunks of the ground that levitate out, and you can use those to run around him, mantle him. Occasionally they'll have things like ballistas or cannons on them that you can use to shoot him.
Oh, that's cool.
Playing with 4 people in that fight was really good, having him floating around the arena, shooting attacks, platforming with the wire bugs as well. I think that it all worked really, really well. A very fun boss fight.
Yeah, showing off some of the mechanics that Rise did better than World there.
Yeah.
Because those wire bug things are just fucking great. Just to zip around. Well, shout outs to you then, because that's you've completed the game again, basically, as well. So it
was huge. I actually didn't get done completing the game until like maybe about 1 o'clock in the morning last night. So this is like Thursday night, 1 o'clock in the morning. I finally beat Ibushi. So at that point, I had finally unlocked the remaining 4 arena quests that I needed to actually complete this challenge. But let me say that took me hours upon hours. As you know, a lot of these hunts, they kind of go on for about 20, 30, at most about 45 minutes before they time out. I think 50 minutes is the timeout.
Yeah.
And obviously a lot of these attempts weren't successful attempts. You know, there were attempts where I'm chasing down a basil geese that keeps on flying away, and I chase it for 30, 45 minutes before I finally hit my 3rd cart and get sent back to the village.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of hard work. Shout outs to a couple players. I did take this online at this point.
To get
through some
hell,
of these missions.
If you hadn't done, I would be like, Will, why didn't you take this online?
Shout outs to Brunhilde and Cerberus. They helped me through many a mission.
Yeah, shout outs, guys. Apologies that you had to help Will. That's totally my fault. I'm really sorry, dude. I didn't know that was going to be that much work. That's on me. That's on me.
Apology accepted, man. It was a big one.
I still love you.
So after finally unlocking those quests, it's time to move on to Arena Quest 3. This time, thankfully, thank God, they still had a hammer for this mission.
Is the hammer like your new main weapon at this point? Can I just ask?
Pretty much, yeah. The hammer is kind of my new main weapon now. We'll get into some potentials a bit later on, but yeah, I'm loving the hammer at this point.
Oh, nice. Well, yeah, that's a silver lining. I'm taking it.
So this mission involves you hunting down 2 monsters this time, a Royal Ludroth and a Naga Cougar. So a Royal Ludroth is kind of like a large green lizard with a big yellow bloom that looks a bit like a lion's mane around its neck.
Yeah, Phil puffs out, doesn't it? It looks like a dandelion when it's all puffed.
Yeah, it kind of massively inflates. Fairly easy to defeat enemy, particularly with the hammer, this one. Avoiding attacks wasn't too bad with it. I got this one down pretty quickly and moved on to the Naga Cougar, which was a much more difficult to fight against boss. It seems a lot more lethal, has a lot quicker attacks. The Naga Cougar kind of looks like a cross between a dragon and a panther. It's like a large black furry beast that has a spiked tail, and it can actually shoot thorns off of its tail at you as well. It's got quite a few large tail sweeping attacks for you to avoid, and it charges around quite a bit. It can also kind of not quite fly, but it can kind of hover around and do various attacks through the sky as well.
Can I just ask quickly for the listeners' benefits, was this fighting them both at the same time? Was it one after the other?
So instead of putting you in an arena, this one actually puts you in one of the levels and you just have to get between them at the same time. So there isn't really an opportunity for you to kind of fight one and then get it to fight the other and have them crashing into each other.
Yeah, that was where I was going with it.
It would have been a much easier quest if that was possible. However, I wasn't able to make that happen, which did result in me having to kind of take on each one of them independently. What I will say about that is, given that this was Arena Quest 3 and I thought it can only get harder from here, for quite some time I actually did try to get the S rank on this mission instead. And the requirement for getting an S rank on this mission was to kill both of them in 6 minutes, so 3 minutes apiece.
That's tough.
Really, it was going to take me about 2 minutes to kill the lizard, so I had about 4 to kill the Nagakuga. However, you probably got to give away a minute there for traveling in between them as well.
Even on a Palamute.
And you don't get to use your Palamutes in the arena missions. It's wire bugs only.
Even when it's not in the arena.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Damn, brutal.
So I did try for quite some time to get the S rank on this. I was finding that the fight with the Nagakuga was very difficult. I decided to target him first, and I worked out a pretty much pristine route to get right to the Nagakuga. I could unleash my maximum ultimate ability before it was even aware of me.
Nice.
But that fight took quite some time, and the route to get back to the Royal Ludroth then became much more complicated because it kind of depends where your fight with the Nagakuga ended.
Yeah.
So that was the kind of sticking point for me there, and try as I might, I couldn't get the S rank on that.
Damn!
I was a little bit worried at that point because I was thinking, well, if there's 2 enemies on this challenge, I don't even really know what's coming later down the line. Am I going to have to fight more than 2 enemies next?
No, so my understanding is that there was only one other double fight. The rest are all single, I believe. So
there's actually,
or is there a triple one?
It's two more singles and a triple, but we'll get to those a bit later on. So defeated, and with only an A rank in my back pocket, it's time to move on to Arena Rank 4.
Yeah, an A rank's still pretty good, by the way.
I was happy with the A rank, but I was pressing for that S rank, and I think the A rank was like 10 minutes, the S rank was 6, so quite a big window there.
Yeah, but two monsters in 10 minutes, still very good going, mate.
Those videos that I watched where I was optimizing my playthroughs and trying to figure out how to do the fights semi-perfectly, really, really paid off there.
You've still got to do it though, mate, so fair play to you.
So we'll move on to Arena 4. This time we're fighting a Barioth, which is kind of like a white Arctic version of the Nagakuga, or the kind of panther dragon thing. It's got some large gusty whirlwind attacks that it slams into the ground. It's an AoE, and if you get caught up in it, you'll get sent flying.
Yeah, and it just jumps away from you all the time, doesn't it, if I remember correctly? Just gets out of range so easily.
It does, and it has a longer tail than the Nagakuga, which it really uses to good effect as well, so this was a very difficult one.
Yeah.
But thankfully, I was armed with the Charge Blade this time. I finally got a weapon that I was familiar with. So, without too much difficulty, I managed to close this one on an A rank after a couple attempts.
Yeah.
I think I got knocked very close when he was injured the first attempt. Second attempt, I think I was probably on track to get an A rank the first time. A ranks are pretty easy to get in this game if you know what you're doing with the weapons and you know what their biggest damage output moves are. But S rank kind of feels like a whole nother level. When you do an S rank in these things, you need to have a completely optimized run through of these things. You need to absolutely perfectly land every hit in some instances to get a stagger, to be able to open up and do a charge move early on and get these moments where you can just inflict massive amounts of damage really early on. And if you're unable to do that, you might as well just abandon the quest there and go back to it, because if you've missed that window to deal hundreds of damage, there's no way you can make that time up later on in the fight.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I didn't say get an S rank on all of them, because...
Yes, oh my god, this would have been... Yeah, an S rank on all of them would have been completely impossible, yeah, given the rest of the show.
That's exactly why I didn't do that. I almost made it 2, to be honest with you, rather than 3. Which I'm glad I didn't, because you did that straight away, but...
Well, honestly, with the week I've had to get to that, it feels like a challenge in and of itself. Like, I feel like I've done 2 challenges this week.
Yeah, I feel like you're a winner regardless. Like, even I don't know how you've done yet, but I feel like you've done incredibly well. You won't get a point if you haven't done it, of course, but you're a winner in my book for what little that means.
So, moving on, we have arena number 5. This time, actually fighting the Rajang. So this is kind of like a large. It looks like a gorilla-shaped thing with goat's horns on either side of its head, like a demon gorilla.
Yeah.
Like a cross between a demon goat gorilla, I guess. That's what I'm going with anyway. It's a very fast moving boss. It gets enraged very quickly. It has a couple different stages where it pumps itself up and unlocks extensions to its already existing moveset. It has a lot of double fist slams hopping around the arena. All in all, like a very shifty, difficult to deal with boss. So this one, I actually, after quite a few attempts, because this was an enemy that I wasn't familiar with, and I had actually been forced to go back and do quite a few hub quests after this point to get this far. This was a fairly new enemy to me that I hadn't fought solo before, so I found this one quite difficult. I finally managed to get away with a B rank with the dual blades.
That's fair play, dude. Dual blades are not the highest damage output, but incredibly quick combos. But are they actually good at breaking and things like that? Because I would imagine they're not.
Not particularly, but out of this set, I wasn't familiar with any of the weapons available for this. I think there was the great sword, the long sword, but I didn't trust myself given that I wasn't able to beat an S rank Arena 1.
Yeah.
I didn't trust myself to do it with a long sword, so I gave that one away.
That's fair.
I think they also have the lance and the shield weapon.
Oh, yeah, they're incredibly fucking technical to use. Like, the lance is really good if you know what you're doing, but it's incredibly hard to use, I think.
And then the final weapon that I had never even touched before was the heavy bow gun. I'd never used any ranged weapons in this game whatsoever. So at that point, I parked it and kind of dragged myself through that with a B rank dual blade run through.
Yeah.
At that point, I was really getting quite worried because we were getting quite late into the day. We only had one arena to go, which was actually the toughest arena. This was Arena 06 that required me to kill a Bazarios, which is like a large, slow-moving rock-like creature, a Volvodon, which is kind of like an armadillo-style dragon that rolls around like a beach ball, and a Basil Geese, which is an extremely flighty and very, very tanky enemy that peppers the ground with various spines that explode like little lava droplets.
Yeah. And some of them are on a delay as well, so you think that you've rolled away and gotten safe, and then suddenly you're dead.
And let me tell you, all of these enemies really like to frequently hit their kind of rage aggro mode. The Basil Geese, particularly the worst of the three. And the fact that he likes to fly away and make you chase him for a lot of the fight as well made this one really tough as well.
Yeah, the Basil Geese is like hella aggressive. Like, couple that with the f***ing Volvodon bouncing around, that's horrible.
It's super aggressive until it's not, and then it'll just kind of take flight halfway through the fight just as you're about to unleash your like major power move.
Yeah, exactly.
However, thankfully, I was blessed with another opportunity to use the charge blade in this fight.
Nice.
And I'd already decided that this was very unlikely to be an S rankable one. And given my performance on the Rajang, I was kind of quite happy to settle for a C rank at this point for this trio.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much exactly what I did. And I ended up with a B rank, which is to beat it in under 50 minutes. So actually B rank is the lowest rank that you can achieve on this. It took me something like 45 minutes odd to actually kill 3 of these. I super took my time with them. They're very tanky. You've only got 10 small healing potions to carry you through the whole mission. So you can't be taking loads and loads of hits.
Yeah, and a Basil Geese will make you use all of them on its own.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that one I settled for the B. But at that point, I'd completed all 6 of the challenges and I had 2 S ranks. I still needed my 3rd S rank.
So off the bat at this point, I'll just say very, very well done. Given all the timing constraints you had, getting all 6 done, having had to grind out all the missions as well, that in itself, very well done.
Yeah, this was an incredibly long challenge. Yeah. And like, I did have a lot of good times in it. The whole length of grinding everything out was good. The stressful, difficult times were getting these S ranks, particularly this final one. I'm going to go ahead and tell you now, James, I did manage to complete the challenge this week. But if it wasn't for a hell of a lot of struggling and strife, I'll tell you what, my God, this was a difficult challenge.
If we were the sort of podcast that gave double points, I would strongly consider giving you double points for that.
I'm quite happy to move for a double points clause right here and now.
We ain't doing that. We ain't going to muddy the waters. But fair play to you, man. Tell us about this last S rank, man. Which one did you end up going for? Presumably the Ranjang or whatever.
It was the Rajang, because I was actually finding the Barioth quite difficult. Yeah. The Rajang I'd obviously struggled with quite a bit as well. However, that was just using the dual blades, and I figured there has to be a better way of doing this. I looked through, I did think about the Great Sword initially, but I had a quick look on YouTube. I managed to find a run where someone had beaten this challenge, got an S rank in it using the heavy bow gun, and I was intrigued.
Wow, what? For context, the bow guns are incredibly good support weapons when you're in a party. I used to use the light bow gun when we and Will played together on Monster Hunter World, but solo, they're not brilliant. They're not quick, in my experience at least.
They're not quick at all, no. But what I will say is this run took me pretty much the entirety of a day to achieve because it required a pretty much perfect performance on my end, as well as a certain healthy amount of sprinkled RNG in terms of that Rajang needed to do very specific attacks that I could counter in order to maximize my damage output. One of those things being his hyper beam move that he does, where he shoots a massive hyper beam that shoots across the arena. Yeah. With the heavy bow gun, it has a wire bug ability that actually takes up 2 wire bugs in order to perform. So you do need to be quite careful with not wasting wire bugs in order to move around. You have to accept the fact that you're going to be very slow during this fight, and you're only going to be able to dodge without the assistance of the wire bugs. But you are able to charge a shield with your gun that enables you to suck up all the power of the hyper beam. Your gun then begins to make a charging up noise, and if it gets to its absolute apex, it fires off a shot which deals about 300 damage. Now, just for context, each of my hits at best were dealing about 30 damage, but we're probably averaging about 20 using the rifle. So, reflecting those hyper beam attacks were near essential. The way that you actually need to play this fight is as follows. You walk into the arena, you zipline down below, and then you stay just far enough out of his roar radius so that when he does roar, you don't get knocked out of whatever attack you're about to do. You need to hit it in the face with as many sticky explosive rounds as possible so that you knock it onto the floor, at which point you can switch over to your slashing rounds and you just need to shoot it in the head as much as possible until you've managed to do that. Hopefully, by that point, with enough slash rounds, even after it's recovered, it's going to take a few more slash rounds to the head in order to break its first horn. At that point, it's going to go into its first level of rage mode. You then need to counteract those moves, deal with the extended moveset that he has, and pray that he hits a couple more of those charged hyper beam shots. If you get 1 to 2 more of those and hit him with your fully charged shot, he'll then get knocked to the floor, and it will enable you to use your wire bugs to mount him. At that point, you need to get 3 perfect wall slams, so you need to slam into each of the 3 towers in the arena or the arena walls. You can then jump off of him and lay some more attacks into him while he's stunned, and at this point you're probably getting low on your slash ammo.
Oh yeah.
So it's time to move over to your upgraded normal ammo, which does about 40 per hit to the head, provided you're within about 10 meters of him at all times. These guns are radius specific, so if you move far enough out, you'll start to get rebounds and very tiny damage compared to what you get if you're standing close to them.
And it happens within a couple of pixels. It's crazy. I remember that from using the Lipo gun in World.
So at that point, one of the harder bits of the challenge that you need to do perfectly, is kind of over at that point. You've done this massive stagger window of coming in, stunning, breaking, riding, crashing, breaking again. At that point, as long as you've done everything perfectly, you're onto a good run. It is possible to S rank it at that point. Just those small things.
That's just the fucking start. There's more. That doesn't kill it.
Well, at that point, you're on your normal ammo. He's probably got his head broken, and at this point, it really does need to be broken so that you're dealing additional critical damage every time you shoot it with your normal ammo. At that point, it just becomes a game of dodging all of his attacks, shooting him in the head consistently, not running out of normal ammo, because if you run out of that upgraded normal ammo, run's kind of over. You're not going to be able to S rank it.
Yeah, you can melee with the guns, but it's slow.
No, at no point do you melee with that gun in this run unless you knock him over and you can do the wire bug riding. At that point, in an optimal run, you punch him in the head because it does 80 damage as opposed to the 30 or whatever you get. And believe me, I was going for absolute optimum damage in this. After eventually doing all of that, hopefully that head is completely broken. You deal a bunch more damage. You'll probably get 1 more knock while he's on the ground. And you just keep praying that he does his hyper beam attack, and you eventually do it. That was so goddamn hard. It took me so long to do. There may have been a weapon I could have used to better effect, but that one seemed to be the kind of the best test in terms of getting things perfectly down. It was such a challenge to do. I jumped out of my chair when I did it because I've been trying it for hours and hours. I even got Liam involved briefly. I got Liam to come in because I heard that the arena health doesn't change based on if you have a buddy in or not.
Okay.
It actually turns out that I had to do this solo, and the reason for that being that any attacks that weren't coming my way were attacks that I couldn't deflect to deal my massive damage output. So doing it with 2 people was actually harder than doing this solo, but you had to have a completely perfect run.
Yeah.
And when I mean completely perfect, all of that stuff needed to happen to get an S rank. Otherwise, I don't think it's possible.
And presumably if you miss a single headshot, you start again.
If you miss a single headshot, or if you just happen to be out of range for that headshot and it deals 20 damage instead of 300, you might as well just abandon the quest and start again. Yeah. If you need to stop to heal yourself, cancel the quest.
Wow.
I think I probably got hit in my perfect run. I didn't heal myself once and I still had a third of my health bar left. So I think I probably only got hit a maximum of maybe 2 or 3 times.
I was going to say that's probably, 1 or 2 hits, I'd have said. Because they're powerful.
I've never had a more perfect Monster Hunter run ever.
There you go.
But goddamn, I can't tell you how much patience and time and practice that took. Super, super proud of myself for doing it. That's probably the best thing I'll ever do in Monster Hunter.
I'm proud of you for doing it as well, given all of the other shit you had to deal with as part of this.
No more Monster Hunter challenges for a while, please.
Oh, well, no, you're only going to get the one. But fair play to you, man. I don't feel quite as bad now that you've succeeded because, I still feel bad. Don't get me wrong. I've already apologised. This will be the last apology, but I am sorry you had to go through all of that. That's completely my fault. I didn't do enough research, clearly. But, mate...
I was so determined to come away with the point this time. Yeah. This year, I'm really switched on for this game challenge. I really want that dub at the end of the year.
Yeah, no one likes being a loser.
No
one likes being a loser.
Mate, I can't wait. I can't wait to stop the gloating as well. I think that's probably the biggest thing. Next year, it's going to be a good year for me.
You say that now. Still some weeks to go, my friend. But honestly, mate, I'm very, very, very impressed with that. I didn't doubt you'd do it because I wouldn't have set the challenge if I thought you couldn't do it. But given all the extra shit you had to deal with, and then to fucking do the flex of using the fucking bow gun.
I'm an overachiever.
Like, you say greatsword was part of that. That's what I'd have been using.
Okay, man. I think that we're kind of rounding out my story of the game challenge this week. I think it's time that I got round to telling you what I've got in store for you this week.
Yeah, please do. I need to restore my lead.
So, James, this week, my challenge to you is... to complete the 2008 Dead Space on hard mode using only your pistol. You also need to complete this without using your telekinesis or stasis abilities. You are, however, still allowed to use your telekinesis and stasis abilities within puzzles in the game that require you to progress. For obvious reasons.
When you say pistol, is that the mining laser?
That is the mining laser.
Okay,
yes.
That's fine. That's a sick weapon. I don't know what stasis in combat is because I have only played limited amounts of Dead Space.
So stasis is kind of your one and only magical ability in the game, although you do also have telekinesis, which enables you to slow down enemies.
That's
so
fair.
you can slow down one or a group of enemies if they fall into your way. It's a bit like a kind of like a Mass Effect biotic ability.
I was going to say,
you shoot a little ball forward and it slows down the enemies.
Yeah, fair. So it's basically the Mass Effect ability, because there is a stasis in that.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Mastery of the combat is going to be pretty essential for this one. My main rule around using telekinesis or stasis in this game is that if you accidentally use it for combat, then you need to pause out of the game and click retry from checkpoint at that point in the game.
That's fair.
I think that this is a pretty solid challenge. This is another one that I practiced myself. It was tough. It's definitely doable within a week. I think the game all in all is probably about 12 to 16 hours as a rough guide.
I can't complain given what I've just put you through. So I'm not going to not going to say anything. So very nice, mate. I'll give it my best shot. I need to get my nose back in front after your valiant effort this week. So yeah.
Good luck to you, man. This one is going to be a tough one. I was umming and ahhing about whether to hold back, but after the week that it's been completing this challenge, I thought, yeah, he'll get on, he'll be okay. Don't make any mistake. This was one that was planned ahead of time. I think this is actually unquestionably the most difficult challenge that I've set you so far in the round of things.
Comfortably, yeah.
However, I think that this one is kind of less of a puzzle and much more of a skill challenge. The rest of them have been things like treasure hunts and a bit of a puzzle in there and stuff like that. I think that some of the challenges you've set me, like have required either like S ranks or doing something unarmed.
Very much skill based, yeah.
So this was one where I wanted to like push the boat out a bit. I think, all right, I'm going to make you sweat this week. Enough with the treasure hunts. Enough with the puzzles. It's time for some grueling difficulty.
Nah, no problem, mate. Walk in the park. I've just finished Liza P. It's not going to be harder than that.
Man, I really hope that confidence carries you through the rest of next week.
It'll be fine. No problem.
But with that said, man, I think it's time that we rounded off this episode. You can, as always, find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and pretty much anywhere else you get your podcasts by searching for Total Pod Mode.
We also post regular video content of our playthroughs, stream highlights, as well as the podcast on our YouTube channel, Total Pod Mode.
You can also find us on X by searching for @TotalPodMode, all one word.
And whilst you're there, you can find me at Mr. Bames, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/MrBames_TPM.
And you can find me at Whodafunk on X, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/Whodafunk. Just a final last request to our listeners. Please do follow us on the previous social medias that we just listed. Drop us a follow, drop us a like, rate the podcast 5 stars on your podcast platform of choice. It really does make all the difference to us. It makes a huge impact in terms of growing the podcast, both in terms of reach and in terms of the content that we hope to bring you in the future. And with all of that said, we'll see you next week, guys.
Until then, goodbye now.